right, everybody. Time for the next panel. Welcome to Viewers Engage. I'm joined by another group of lovely gentlemen, starting with Schoolgirl Crush, who will be joining me on webcam. As always, webcams are optional on these. But he'll be making sure that I'm not just speaking to avoid OMG, it's Crush's face. Crush, I've met you before. We went to ECT together this year, East Coast Throwdown. And of course we have Schoolgirl Crush, we have Blitz's Barn, and Moo Cactus. Welcome to Viewers Engage, everybody. So this panel is the one where we talk about viewer engagement directly on the stream. And I probably could have titled this a bit more specifically, because it's not as if the people here in chat are not quote-unquote engaged. But, I'm actually... Okay, now that I'm not mute and deafened in the Discord
call...
Now
there we
I was
go.
wondering,
Welcome back.
Really, not already talking. Okay, so Schoolgirl Crush.
I was gonna say it, but
I saw you typing. I'm like, oh wait, what's wrong? They're quiet and Moo's typing. Something's happening. So we have Schoolgirl Crush, who we've met before. Blitz said, "OMG, it's Crush." We've met for East Coast Throwdown this year in September. That was a good time.
Yep, short list of people Gavin has met in person.
What's the Spartan, who I've also met in person?
Let's see. There was Combo Breaker, there was CEO, there was Evo, there was literally the years that you lived in Charleston.
Yeah, about 5 years plus an event or two, or 10. And then finally we have Moo Cactus, who maybe one day we'll meet in person, probably at a Rivals event, I assume.
Yeah, who am I?
Who is?
You know?
Amorphous Stout card from Inscription.
It's not pronounced stout. That's a drink. The animal is a stoat.
Stout. What's the difference?
It's Stoutland, the Pokemon. Yes, the dog.
I don't know if we'll do anything quite as exciting as creating an entire new Discord channel. Maybe we will. I'll come up with something. But okay, so Viewers Engage. I probably could have been a bit more specific on the title, but this is about not really just viewers engaging in the normal way like everyone is in chat, which I always love and appreciate, but this is more direct than that. So what is the panel today? The panel today is Schoolgirl Crush, who has joined, who's been a big proponent of the Pokemon Tournament Lock and has really joined streams there and joined for other streams. Blitz the Spartan, who is one of the constant voice actors for Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney streams, the Great Ace Attorney streams, and joins all sorts of streams all over the place. And Moo Cactus, who's usually a part also in the Pokemon Tournament Lock, and has also been a part of just many of the cooler ideas that we've done on this stream. The Neon White full blind playthrough together, which was half a race, half a playthrough. Thanks for the sub, Blitz Spartan. By the way, final night for subs for the giveaways. So I really wanted to bring together a cast who's been very active in making the content that you all have seen throughout the year in one place, and talk about the role of viewers directly with streamers, what you guys like, what you didn't like, what you want more of, what you think we should do less of, just going over specifically the role of the viewer as a partner of the streamer, not just a viewer, right? And my first question to everybody, and we'll just ask one at a time, and we'll kind of do open floor as we go on. If you have an opinion, just raise your hand, talk, speak up, whatever, between questions. But what is... well, let me ask a broad question first. How do you think events on GavinX, on twitch.tv/GavinXI have gone this year? What do you like the most when you see other people who are not just me on my stream? That's a very broad question to start with. I don't know if there's a really easy direct answer to that. I'll start with Moo Cactus, because I already feel like he has a somewhat coherent response to that. What are your thoughts on guests on my stream? What do you want to see more of? What did you like, etc.?
So the thing that I like the most with what we've got in our stream is that when fighting games are a big component of the streams that we have, it's really inviting to have these big lobbies and people in involved in actually playing the game instead of the bigger streamers, the ones at the top who only ever play on ladder. And I like that because it is more involved. And along with that, the idea of having guests on the stream that watch the stream is really entertaining, and I love it. The one concern, and I know you didn't really ask this question, but the one concern I have is it's hard to scale if you have a bigger audience. It's hard to really get everybody that wants to join in a time to join. So I think I'm sort of hitting on a point that you might want to go to later, but that's sort of my interpretation. Is it's always great to have people who watch the stream and are really invested in the content that you put out to be able to speak and participate.
Okay. No, that's a very coherent answer. So I came to you first, and we'll definitely shelf that question for later in the panel on scalability with direct viewer participation. Crush, thoughts on the general role of guest hosts, guest viewers, co-hosts, etc., guests on the stream?
Yeah, and I'll try to speak up a little bit because I know my volume sometimes doesn't get picked up too well. But overall, and I think probably my point of view is a little less typical because I don't really use Twitch much.
Mhm.
And so I pretty much only watch you or other people that I know from, communities that are a little more close knit when streaming. And so I guess I have the point of view that guests, co-stars, however you want to put it, are sort of like friends that are putting on a show together, and that the streamer is someone who's producing and making the most of the organization aspect of putting everything together and how it goes. But that in the end, and I feel this a lot. I think Mookak kind of covered the fighting game aspect of when streams are going on, which I also really appreciate. So I guess I'll cover more of the when we're just hanging out in VR chat. That really, or Jackbox encapsulates the feeling of a bunch of friends just putting on a show together.
Low Guy Inc., big fan of this take, he says in chat. Blitz, you are probably the person who has been on the most twitch.tv/GavinXI streams. Definitely in this group, probably top 3 overall on the server. What are your thoughts on what we've been doing, how we approach it, what you liked about it, etc.? Role of guests in general.
I think most of that determines I just like a lot of the variety of what you stream because I'm a part of the voice acting group. I'm also a part of the FGC. Big fan of Jackbox. I'll also just pop in chat every now and then, just depending on whatever you're playing. So, my favorite part of that is the variety. There's a different flavor for whatever you're particularly into. So, I know, one in particular, I'll say shout out to Dro at the Bold, who is a huge fan of our Ace Attorney streams. I don't notice him as much per se in some of the other ones. I know he'll pop in every now and then for FGC stuff, but I'll notice him primarily engaged and interacting in the Ace Attorney streams. And then you have other people who may not be as much of a fan of visual novels, but they'll be a fan of fighting games or any other type of adventure style. I think the last one that comes to mind was Gravity Rush, which Deerhearts was a big fan of. Speaking of, she would be here, but she is currently in a raid.
Priorities, man.
Double booking. Out. Double booking. F. Okay, so you bring up a good point when you bring up Droid. I want to add Amethyst Tago to that group of super fans for the voice acting streams.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna add her as well. I wasn't sure how to transition into that, but probably one of my favorite moments, or I wouldn't call it necessarily a moment because it was throughout the stream, is not only getting our interaction, because pretty much everyone was going into the new series blind,
Mhm.
but Taco, who is someone who had played these games, was on the edge of her seat waiting to see our reactions to all the moments that happen. And so that just added another perspective onto it, rather than just our reaction, but her reaction to our reactions, which
And
I enjoyed a lot.
And last year we had a panel on being the ideal viewer, right? Like the people who are like always in chat 24/7. And I feel like Taco would have been invited to that panel had they joined the community a year earlier. Just being a very good panel, just being a very good viewer, and not spoiling things, being active, giving us something to bounce off of, right? And that's what my next question is going to be: is what is your take on paying attention to chat when you're a guest on the stream rather than the streamer? Do you leave that to the streamer for the most part? Do you try to be as active with chat? Like, where do you see your role as a guest and co-host with Twitch chat compared to the streamer and what you would normally do? We'll start with you, Blitz. We'll go in reverse order.
For me, it depends on the situation, because I know there will be a lot of times, like during the Ace Attorney streams, where, because since I was the voice of Ryunosuke, I pretty much had a line at all moments throughout the game, so I wasn't able to interact as much. But then there will be times where, whenever I had a down moment, whenever someone else was talking, that yeah, I'll pop into chat every now and then just to interact with people, or like if it's in an FGC stream, if I'm not on deck, or if I'm not playing a match or on deck or something, I'll interact with stream. But it helps to find a nice balance, because sometimes you're just engaged with the streamer itself, but it's also important to remember to engage with the audience, because that's the whole main reason why you're streaming. Yeah, that's about it.
All right. Moo Cactus, thoughts on Twitch chat interaction as a co-host, guest, streamer?
That's not reverse order. But I can talk, piggybacking off of what Blitz said. It is important to interact with the viewer as well. Like, even if we're sort of like co-communicating on the stream. What I like, the difficult thing for me is that I would like to be that person to read chat as well, but I have difficulty because I focus so hard on the game that I forget to look at chat. And, I'm one of those people, I still only have a single monitor setup, right? So if I had a better setup with multiple monitors, it would also be easier. But, like, even with that being said, like, I would like to be that person to read chat and sort of assist in that role, but also it really depends on the game that's being played, and like how much is being spent like watching the interactions between the people on the stream, as opposed to how much is it like just sort of one person thinking or not doing a whole lot, right? Like if you and someone else were playing something like chess, for example, and it's a long timer game, right? This is just a theoretical example. You can spend that time where it's your opponent's move and they're thinking for a while to sort of review and chat. But when we were playing Neon White, for example, we're trying to do this like rush the whole time. We're not trying to spend any time outside of the level. It's really difficult to keep up with chat. So it's like, depending on the game, it matters more or less how much chat interaction there is. So I don't know. It's kind of a difficult question to answer.
Sure. And I kind of want to get a little bit more to the bottom of this, but I'm gonna let the round finish. Crush.
So I'm actually going to start off with some common ground with Moo, because I do think it depends on the game how much like chat interaction there is in general. I mean, the streamer does what they think is best, but there's certainly games that require more focus from the people involved than others, and especially if they're doing their own stream alongside this streamer, and it's sort of a collaboration, then that's just unfeasible. But I'm more of this the state of mind that the chat sort of belongs to the streamer a little bit. And I'm even doing it right now where I have the stream up and I can see people's comments, but I'm not acknowledging. I'm sort of pretending that I don't see them. And it's not out of any sort of rudeness. I'm just like, hey, if there's a comment that Gavin wants to shout out or point out or anything, that's his prerogative, and I'm gonna let him run the show how he thinks is best, and I'll do my best to supplement that. But I'm not gonna. I don't feel like I'm gonna step outside of my box in that way.
Sure, and I guess that I guess as the streamer, I don't really think about that often because I usually just roll with how comfortable my co-hosts are, right? Like if you guys start talking to chat back and forth, I'm rolling with it. I try not to own it personally, but I don't really explicitly say, hey, I want everybody to look at chat and feel free to interact. I just never really think to say that, right? Not that I have, and it's because I don't have a problem with it, right? So that's an interesting take that I don't really think too much about. Interesting. Okay, I know what we're going to do. So last panel, the panel grouped together to create a new channel. We now have Only Pets in the Discord. This panel's task by the end of the panel is to come up with what our next group interactive Twitch stream playthrough is going to be. Whether it's something like XCOM Commanderless, or the Pokemon Tournament Lock, or even something just one-on-one, or something like that. I want you guys to help formulate what next year is going to be the first direct guest plus Gavin cooperative group stream. It's a tough task. We have 40 minutes to come up with it, 35 minutes to come up with it. I want you guys to think on it.
My early vote is a community playthrough of Detroit Become Human.
Oh, good lord.
I was going to mention Minecraft.
Gavin makes zero decisions. The community decides the character's fates.
Isn't that just Twitch plays Detroit Becomes Human with extra steps?
Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
story-based crew.
Moose had Minecraft. Chad, I'd love to hear you think about it. Little guy says Telltale Walking Dead.
My first idea, which is probably in the minority, was a puzzle game. I was thinking like The Witness.
The Nonary games are still on the backlog. 999.
Ooh, the Nonary games?
But
those are kind of half already voice acted.
Yeah, no, that's the problem with that. Think on it some more. Everybody. Chat, give us some thought as well. We'll stop by a time or two left in the panel and get everyone's updated thoughts. And I'll give my thoughts on it. We'll come up with something, but ultimately you three are going to decide what it is. I will not have any. I will not cast a vote. So my next question is: throughout the year, there's been many difficulties getting some of these together, and some of them have been easy. And I kind of want to know, what do you guys think is the ideal way to handle, or what's the ideal games to play with the ideal groups to make these playthroughs finish, right? And I'll give the two opposite extremes right now. Actually, I'll give the point of view from all three of you, right? So Blitz the Spartan is part of the voice acting group, right? And a lot of us prioritize that group over other things, right? We'll cancel other events, we'll cancel personal plans because we really want to get this done, and the five of us will move heaven and earth sometimes to make these streams happen because we just want to beat the game. We're so interested in storing what happens. Me and Moocactus are just two of us, and it got a while to get started, but once we got started, we were able, with our flexible schedules, to make it a pretty weekly thing, right?
Yeah, it was pretty consistent.
Crush is on the unfortunate side of this discussion because the Pokemon tournament actually all three of you are part of this. but Crush is kind of the biggest advocate for it. The Pokemon Tournament Lock has been notoriously hard to get running because I don't know if it's a mix of the difficulty of production, the difficulty of setting it up, and the difficulty of all schedules conflicting, but it's been rather hard to get that group started. And I kind of want to know what you guys think is worth it and what is the ideal, right? So for the Pokemon Tournament Lock, right? If it doesn't move for another 2 months, it gets harder and harder to run. We might have to revisit exactly what it is. Sorry to spoil that to everybody. I think writing was slightly on the wall there, but not saying anything's happening to it just yet. But, I mean, there was no chance of Ace Attorney getting canceled because all of us had enormous stakes and interest in finishing it. So I just want everyone's thoughts on what the ideal situation and what's worth holding onto and what's not holding onto. And this kind of guides what we're starting next. Hello, Diskin in chat. Crush, I think we'll start with you because you'll probably have, I'm approaching your take of it probably from the most pessimistic angle of the group.
Yeah, I'm tasked with keeping the Pokemon Tournament Lock alive right now, live in front of everybody. I have to advocate for it like one of those lawyer shows. So the reason why I think the Tournament Lock is still alive despite difficulties, we'll put it that way.
We'll say hiatus.
Yeah, hiatus.
Soft hiatus.
It's on soft hiatus, but not necessarily dead, I think, in my mind at least. And sure, there have been difficulties with the scheduling. And I think probably because it's so young, recent, I don't know. But there's something about it that doesn't grab, I guess, the devotion of everybody the same way that you were mentioning the Ace Attorney streams do. But I think that it's an interesting idea. It's different. And also because it can be easily constrained in like a time frame. Like we basically have each stream, each leg of it scheduled out. So there's a goal in sight that we have a clear sight of. And I think that that's sort of, that's a pro in its court. Now the con obviously is the amount of people involved makes trouble with scheduling. And I think that's probably, part of the difficulty of it. So right now it's at a neutral state. Advocating anything else, I don't know what gets people going on something because, like, I'm obviously really excited about the tournament lock, and I can't speak for everybody else. I'm sure it's just life getting in the way rather than a lack of enthusiasm. But there's certainly, if there's a mountain in the way, it's not getting moved. I'll put it that way. So I don't know what would inspire that kind of devotion and what the difference between the tournament lock and like the voice actor projects are. That's something to think on.
I really enjoyed that take. And now I'm asking more questions than now I have more questions. But I'll move on for now. Moo Cactus, you're approaching from the very fast but small and consistent group playthrough, quote unquote, me and you, through Neon White. Is that a good ideal? Should I do more of that, or should we go bigger, or should we go smaller, or whatever?
I personally loved doing the sort of 1v1 style of just going through a game and sort of like comparing times, because that's like the speedrunning aspect. That's something that we both sort of have I wouldn't say tight, but like a little loose interest in speedrunning as a whole. And so doing blind races like that was really fun. And I think it was really, especially on those days that were really close, it was just such a blast there was one day we even tied, right?
Yeah.
That was amazing. I love that. And comparatively, I feel like so I kind of want to look at the Pokemon rival lock or tournament lock rather, and in a comparative sense, because I think what's difficult is that when it's just the two of us, it's a lot easier to fold our schedules together,
Mm-hmm.
and also it's like a competitive thing. I think that's also a difficult thing for a lot of general people to grasp. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do really think that having that sort of blind race is awesome. I love that idea. If you find any more like other games, casual or like maybe even 1v1s that you're just like, hey, this is new. Let's fight face off, see who gets further or who like
Mm-hmm.
beats the game sooner, right? Like I think that's a really cool idea.
And I think that what made me love Neon White just as much, because me and you are kind of like have very similar thoughts on competition and speedrunning in particular, is that I also got to really enjoy playing through the story of the game, right? Because we were both playing through it blind, and we were both like just playing through the game together. It was like having a friend side by side watching and playing the game together, right? I mean, it's like, there was no player two who was just watching, right? We both got to experience the game at the same time, and I thought that was also what made Neon White incredibly unique and fun as an experience together. So, I also mentioned that, first off, hello to Ambulance Taco, who we've name dropped about 4 times this roundtable already. So I'll let them go back and look at the VOD. Memories of the Celeste race, yeah, I think that I tried to get TSF on this panel as well. He wasn't able to make it happen. But again, like I did the individual soul lock with him, and that was another like kind of quick, mobile, able to do things fast setup, and I thought that those were all very successful this year, and I'm interested in looking into more of them. Maybe it's Mouse, thank you for the follow. Blitz is Spartan.
Can I add one little last thing to this?
Sure.
I think one thing that made Neon White particularly easy to sort of get these sessions for is that it had very clear start and stop points, and it was easy to just drop and then start back up because it had exactly X amount of levels, usually 10 per stage, and so we do that, and then we're like, that was awesome. All right, 10 levels next session, perfect. Not a lot of games have that sort of same balance, and I do think that's why Pokemon is still alive, because we can treat the gyms as that sort of indicator, right? That marking. I think some games that are a little more open-ended would be a lot more difficult, right? So, like, if we were to blind race something like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, even though there are gyms, because it's more open-ended, how far exactly are they really, right? Like, that's a tougher question.
Yeah.
And then even further, if we go to completely open world games like Breath of the Wild, yeah, that's exactly the game, right? There's no saying, who's going to figure out how to even beat the game. So that's just one other point I wanted to note.
And I mean, I've definitely absolutely advocate for, and Mukactus, you're probably going to be the one who is my main partner on this, is to advocate to find more games that are not traditionally things that you would think about for this. Like, I mean, Neon White makes a lot of sense, but we want to replicate what we did for Neon White with other games, right? And there is that scale of open world checkpoints, but I feel like we can, we'll find games that work for this idea. If anything, maybe it's race, maybe it's kind of this soft, like, win-lose condition, but being able to play through the whole game with a friend is kind of an amazing experience, right? Celeste, level by level, would have been, like, imagine the world where we did this with Celeste, right? My God, that would have been just as cool, if not cooler, than than Neon White, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, who knows? Maybe the new game from the devs, from the Celeste devs, extremely okay. Maybe that will be it. Who knows? The name is passing me or something. But anyways, I mean, you could do things like Hades runs, like Hades 2, when it fully releases. Everyone starts to run at the same time, and you compare progress. You know, something like that. That's an idea. Roguelikes, right? Slay to Spire has Spy with Friends built in. You know, that's a race mode.
I think one thing to mention with roguelikes as well is that you'll probably get different characters. You'll see different like boons that you get. You'll get different unlocks, and so people are just gonna be like, "Wait, you unlocked this thing? I haven't even seen that. What is that?" You know, and I think that sort of community learning is really cool,
especially when it's blind. Especially when it's blind, not when one person is like, you know, secretly, you know, knows everything, right? And then it becomes kind of an unbalanced experience. But
because then it's not really a spoiler because you're both just now learning about it.
Yep. I'm gonna move on to Blitz before we get too. We could probably go back and forth on this one specifically forever. Blitz, you were. I think Blitz represents the group that moved mountains the most successfully. The largest group, the longest playthrough, with 5 to 6 people constantly. How did we make it happen? How do we replicate this with other things? Is it replicable? You were also part of. I mean, you're a part of many other things. So I just want your take generally on difficulty and thoughts on how to make these mountains move.
The easiest solution is for everyone to quit their jobs.
Done.
That's my point. That includes you, Gavin. I think the most important part of that was communication. Like, we would have someone, whether it was you, whether it was 9 times out of 10 Deer Hearts, but someone would pop in every week and be like, all right, what is our schedule looking like? What are our days off? And so we were able to communicate and work our way around it. Also, I don't know if we were necessarily the largest. I think the rival lock started off at 8, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
So, but I mean, 5 to 6 is still a pretty large amount of people. It's definitely more than just you and Moo. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any points that haven't been brought up yet, but I think they pretty much covered them. So I think the biggest thing for us was the communication, and based on how far we got, just the dedication to see it through to the end. Not to say that we're not dedicated to any of the other projects we're in, but I know you're a big fan of the Ace Attorney series, so am I, and I think Cody was the other one who played through the games, so...
PSF, yep.
Yeah, I think we were just as excited to see not only play the game first for ourselves, but now that we're going back into the older games, the ones that we're more familiar with, we're now taking the role of Taco, where we want to see the people who are voicing with, we want to see their reactions so that we can re-experience that for the first time.
And right now, Iskin and Deer Hearts are the 2 people who have not played through the standard Ace Attorney series, so I'm excited to, I mean, like you said, I'm excited to take that Taco spot and kind of be able to watch reactions again and just rediscover the game. We are taking questions and answers. We'll take them fairly soon because question and answer does take a while. So Azure Wolf asks, and this is a pretty broad, big question, and me and Mookactus sort of talked a little bit about this. Do y'all have any games in mind already that you'd like to play, voice, etc.? I'm going to mention, as a half spoiler, the 3 things that I think are most likely to happen in 2023, and then I'll let my other panelists discuss as well. I think that 3 things are very close to guaranteed. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to get a fully broadcast playthrough once we find the group for that. And the thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is that's going to be what the most mobile flexible group is going to be. Like, they have to be more mobile and flexible than the Ace Attorney group at the end of the day. The other 2 things is I expect wholeheartedly for us to get into the realm of Pokemon ROM hack playthroughs, with groups or without, whether it's a soul lock for a Pokemon ROM hack, like Pokemon Reborn or Pokemon Unbound, things like that. I think Mookactus is either like waving a very large green flag or a very large red flag, one or the other, no in between. And the third thing I'm expecting is we're going to go a little harder on Fire Emblem coming up this year. And I do see a lot of really cool multiplayer Fire Emblem playthroughs happening, and I'd like to do our take of that. So those are the three things that I'm looking at for 2023 that I want to make happen. And I'll ask the rest of my panel. I'll mention, if you got here late, this panel's charged by the end of this panel in about 20 minutes to declare what is the next group playthrough that we'll be doing on our channel, whether it's 1, 2, 10 people. We'll make every effort we can to do it. They'll pick. But Crush, what to answer Wolf's question, what do you have in mind that you'd like to play, voice, etc., that you'd like to be featured in? You'd like to see featured on Gavin XI content that's just me. It doesn't have to be you and me. It can be something you're a part of. It cannot be. It's up to you. What do you want to see?
Okay. Dang. Well, be a voice in. I'm down for almost anything. In terms of games that I've already had in mind to play, I mean, like, this is a bit of a spoiler for one of the things I was writing up, but I mean, Elden Ring multiplayer recently came out with the Colosseum thing as well. That could be something to check out. I feel like that has potential, even if it is a bit long. So maybe it's a stretch, but you know, that's something I may be hopeful for, and there's lots to do there. I like that you brought up Baldur's Gate, because those kinds of like Divinity games have been in the back of my mind as something I want to try, but never really something that I actually put a foot forward into trying. So that could be interesting. And right now, the only other thing is, like I mentioned before, puzzle games. Something like, The Witness, where we could just sort of hand the controller off to the next person after we make one attempt, and shuffle along that way. Or even something like It Takes Two, where it's already built in for multiplayer. Those are my ideas right now. None of those, I think, involve voice acting, but
That would be you mentioned The Witness in the past, the controller idea. Maybe that's how we could do Detroit Become Human, one of those types of games. Like,
each person controlling a character.
Oh, each person controlling characters is an idea, but controlling of choice by choice. And then if a choice comes up, you mute the person who has to make the choice, mute and deafen, so they make it in a vacuum. The rest of us comment on it. Blitz, to Azure's question, games in mind that you'd like to play your voice.
Going off the Fire Emblem idea, I don't know why my mind immediately goes to Fire Emblem Commander list. Like, each person controls a different character.
Yeah.
But based on the amount of characters there are, that would be a huge commitment. But we could just probably pass around characters like we did for XCOM.
Yeah, I think at that point you do a group of characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Auction them with Gavin points.
You could do a draft. I mean, Three Houses is a great one for that, because you get the bulk of your army right away.
Right.
Yeah. I'll try and make this quick. There are many examples of Fire Emblem multiplayer playthroughs on YouTube. Many of them are competition based. So you have your soldiers that you pick in a draft, mid game, late game, early game, etc., and you get points for killing units. You get points for clearing missions, etc., etc. And whoever has the most points wins, right? And you don't directly interfere with your opponents, but you kind of do, right? Because you steal their kills, you set them up, you kind of play a little bit of ambush gaming, right? You might strand an archer, quote unquote, by accident. You can't do anything non-consensually to an archer character, like you can't like warp them or things like that. But but you have to eventually beat the game too, or you all lose, right? So something like that for Fire Emblem is kind of what I was thinking. And we'll discuss that further in the future. But if that sounds appealing to you, then we'll talk about it. Azure Wolf's already like, yes, this is awesome. Let's do it. Moo Cactus, question to you. Games you have in mind already.
So the games that I'm thinking of, I know you mentioned Pokemon, but I want to see a first playthrough of the game Monster Sanctuary, which is sort of adjacent to Pokemon. It's not the same game at all, because each monster has like its own skill tree that you put points into. I would love to see other people play the game. I would love to also play the game, but I've already got so many hours in it, and it wouldn't really be a fair playthrough.
And frankly, I appreciate you suggesting a game that you know you can't be a part of, but want to see this version of a playthrough being done with already. So shout outs to you for tackling that part of the prompt. But continue, sorry.
But yeah, I think the game itself is a wonderful experience, even for just like a single playthrough. Just because, you know, there's so many different monsters, so many different ways to tackle each situation. You can make your own team with monsters you like. And then other teams where, you know, maybe you don't care so much about what the monsters are, but you see a bunch of stuff that they do that works together to form a team. So it's like this sort of who's going to form like the team that beats the game, right?
Mhm.
It's a cool idea. And I don't think it necessarily has to be a race. But you know, just like you two both playing at the same time, sort of figuring out, because it's a Metroidvania, it's difficult to progress like linearly.
Right.
It's not linear, but you know, it's a cool idea. I'm not 100% sure how it would work, but
Well, we could find
I
a way.
think it'd be fun. I think it'd be fun as heck.
Okay. Last chance for questions from chat. We're running out of time here because I do want to kind of, at this point for my panel, open the floor. Anything on this topic of being a participant on a stream that we haven't talked about already? Specifically, this panel is about being a participant on a stream, being a co-host, your role as a viewer elevated to being on stream, things that you like, things you don't like, what you want to see more of in a more broad sense. The floor is open. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss with the group that we haven't talked about already? One at once.
I think I mentioned earlier about the difficulty of like convincing people in a competitive setting, if there's a large group, to get together. I wanted to know other people's opinions on that, because like that's one of the things that I think is sort of a downfall of the Pokemon Tournament lock that the Ace Attorney series doesn't have. It's not like people are going against each other, and it's not like you're going into this like if you're behind and you're like you see that this thing is getting set up. Do you really care as much? You know, that's an interesting theory.
So I have I've thought about this at length about ways to salvage or what to do with the tournament lock specifically, right? I thought about talking about it in the keynote, but I knew we'd get to it in this panel. I mean, if I were to make one adjustment to probably make Soul Link significantly easier to run and exist and happen, it would be to remove the tournament aspect of it, to remove the PvP aspect of it, and make it more of a pure race/survival. So who is remaining at the end of it? You can still have some versions of interaction. I'm not exactly sure what that would be yet. You know, getting rewarded for, or either getting rewarded for being first, or a catch-up mechanic for last place, so it's not a pure randomized Nuzlocke. But I think that, I mean, that's one of the first places I thought about going with the tournament lock, which it would become a rival lock at that point. But of ways to like kind of fix what you're saying, right? Because the way that I think of competition is a little different from the way Crush thinks about competition, which is different from how Blitz thinks about competition. And it kind of creates a barrier, not because we don't want to do it, but because it creates too large of a barrier to keep it going, right? That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I definitely think there's differences in thought. I mean, me personally, I'm sort of all about competitive stuff. Like cooperative is great as well. I'll play anyone in a cooperative game, but I really enjoy being competitive with people in a video game because maybe that's just a part of my nature. So maybe that's a point that I can't really understand or empathize with, but I can definitely sympathize with the idea that like, especially when people get behind, because there's always it in my idea of a competition, there's typically winners and losers, and it never feels good to lose. And so as soon as you get into a losing position, I know it can be easy to start to give up. And so, I mean, yeah, think probably the way to fix that is some kind of way to keep the competition a little bit tighter. Not have there be so much of a chance for there to be a blowout, right? Um, and that goes along with what Gavin is saying, like implementing mechanics that allow people from behind to catch up. Um, you know what? That's the end of my train of thought.
Fair
I
enough.
think one thing that could be done, and I don't know if everybody agrees. I think we might have even talked about this before starting the tournament lock forever ago, but I'm bringing it up now because we've had some time experimenting with the tournament lock. The thought of after the gym leader, we have like a winner and of the split, letting everybody catch up to that point, and then the next stream everybody starts at the same point, but for the sake of like the battles, right, the tournament, you have what you had at the end of the previous split. So it's like you're still behind in the sense of like Pokemon Showdown, but you're not behind for the next split.
And I actually thought about an idea that's slightly more drastic than that, but kind of fits the same idea, where when you hit a gym, it starts a timer where you have to beat the gym within that timer, or you're out of the race, right? So it's a competitive way to say, because you'll have one extra time to tackle the gym because it starts the timer, but if you don't make the timer, if you're so far behind, then you're out. But it also means that at the end of every split, everyone has caught up to each other, right? By forcing the rules to make that a thing, right? So I mean, I came to the same conclusion that you did, just in a drastically different way.
I think the way you're thinking about it is a little bit too difficult to enforce because the length of battles is too variable in a randomizer Nuzlocke.
Yeah, but the idea would be you gave them enough time to account for that.
Yeah. I get that.
Blitz, do you have any thoughts on that? Because we need to move on.
I feel like y'all all hit the same notes, but at the same time, I think the randomizer or the Nuzlocke itself can be a big factor, because I remember personally, like, every time I would die, like, I would have to reset, someone would always beat the gym, so I always felt like I was getting behind. And then randomly, the last session that we did, I went from, like, last place to second. So I think that alone can add a bit of randomness, but I do agree with the points made about how if you do fall behind, it can feel like it's almost impossible to catch up. And I'm not sure if that's due to the tournament aspect itself or what, but yeah, I like the ideas that have been brought up, and definitely something that we can revisit whenever we eventually revive the series. I would like to go back to it.
And I think that, like, the variance that you're talking about, we kind of had thought that would kind of mellow out as we made it farther into the playthrough and everyone stabilized, quote unquote. But I don't think we ever, like, hit that threshold, right? Like, anyways. Okay. So I tasked the group with an idea. We have 5 minutes to come up with it. What is going to be one of the guaranteed group playthroughs that we do on twitch.tv/GavinXI, whether you're a part of it or not, in 2023. Can't guarantee win in 2023. It could be first, but it depends on what you guys come up with here. What is, and all of you, I want some agreement here. What is it going to be? I suggested Fire Emblem multiplayer. It could be any of them. We can figure that tech out for that later. Baldur's Gate 3 is a ways away, so it's guaranteed to happen. And then I also suggested, what was the third? Pokemon ROM hack Soul Links. I just want, okay, floor's yours, guys.
I'm going to strongly advocate for puzzle game a la Witness, but I just want to throw onto the floor the last idea that I came up with recently, which is something like time trial, multiple attempt type games. Specifically, I'm looking at, in my list, games like Minute, literally takes a minute per run and then you swap off to somebody. Helltaker, you force a timer on somebody to solve the puzzle. If they don't do it, switch off. Or Super Meat Boy. All short games, all something that you can just be like, hurry up and do it, or else somebody else is getting the controller. But my number one is going to be puzzle games.
So before
I know
discussion,
there's
you guys settle on an answer.
I know there is a puzzle game called We Were Here, and that has a series. That's a literal cooperative puzzle game.
That's what I was thinking of.
We Were Here Together as a game, right?
We
I'm
were
not
here.
too
We
familiar
were
with the series.
here to. We were here together. We were here forever. There's 4.
I'm not wholly familiar with the series, so I mean that's a good starting point for a blind playthrough.
I have played all of them, so I'm out of the question. But I like the idea of seeing that as a playthrough.
Nice.
Blitz, you have any thoughts on it?
So one idea that just popped into my head. I know that I'm big into the Ocarina of Time randomizers. There is an option to do a multi-world where basically multiple people will it'll be a setup for like multiple people, like it can spread items for each person in a different person's world. The only issue I have with that is Ocarina of Time is usually one of those games where if you're doing something like that, you want to do it all in one shot. And so that could drag out quite a while. So I don't know if that's something that a group of people could fully commit, because that could take multiple hours at a time to do. So
Okay, we've come up with many ideas. We need to reach a consensus.
True. I'm gonna stick to my guns. But now a specific game. I guess We Were Here series. Well, we don't have to do the series, but starting with one would be a good starting point.
I like it.
I guess my idea was a puzzle game, so I'm on board with it as well. If 2 people are down, I'm down with it.
Okay, so I'm gonna write a note. Explore We Were Here series co-op playthrough, and I'm not going to reveal any more outside of that because I don't know where we're even going to go with that. I need to study the game. I wish you could co-op that board game part of Star Wars Battlefront 2 that I can't remember the name of. Galactic
Conquest.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
Oh, that would be so good. Oh, we're dead. Oh, he suggested the absolute best thing possible. That is absolutely impossible to do. I remember like wanting to do like fake Galactic Conquest with my friends, like just write down the board and figure it out from the fuck. Way to go, little guy, for giving us the impossible right off the bat. Okay. Schoolgirl Crush, Blitz Spartan, Moo Cactus, thank you guys so much for joining. In a sentence or less, final words, or 2 sentences or less, or you got 30 seconds. Give it to me. Final
Be
thoughts,
excellent
Crush.
to each other.
Games are sick.
For all the traveling I did this year, I have a newfound appreciation for you. You do so much traveling, and I am so glad that you do it all, because I am whipped this year.
Dude, I mean, I don't know if you caught the beginning of the keynote, but we lost 100 hours of streaming just to traveling, just right off the bat. So anyways, I'll see you guys later. 5 minutes from now, we're going to have our marquee event. We're going to have the streamers recap panel. So stay tuned. Crush, Moo, Blitz, thank you for crushing it. See you guys later.
Cool.
See ya.